But hey, we're live. It's the Casey and Scott show today, and we have no agenda. I definitely have. I always have questions for Casey because she is, for those of you that haven't collided with her and her fantastic work, she's the publisher of Rulerless, and Casey and I are old friends in digital years, even though she's much younger than I am. She's still an old friend. Uh, so Casey, how are you? How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. This is actually my second time going live today. But the first one was kind of lonely. I've been going live on TikTok every morning for like a few weeks. Um, but I haven't gone live with somebody else yet. So this is new. This is my first time going live on Substack too, so it's exciting.
Oh, fantastic. Well, there you go. I'm happy to be the person that helps you make your debut here on Substack. Um, we can maybe just while we're waiting for folks to jump on and I get to more specific questions that I have for you. Uh, I have never been on TikTok, and I know just from watching and listening to some of the stuff that you have shared on your Substack and on LinkedIn and so forth, you're kind of a TikTok rock star. So tell me, so and it's obviously been on the news, but I don't watch much news, so I really don't know what the hell is going on. But give us the lowdown. What's going on with TikTok? Why are you on TikTok, and what's TikTok have to offer for folks that might be aware of but not yet dialed into what the program is for and who's it for?
Well, because it's such uh, a vast whatever platform network. I mean, there's just so many people on it. Is what I'm trying to say. So there ends up being something for everybody. I mean, I think a few years ago it would have been a lot of teenagers and dance videos, but now it's definitely a diversified platform where you can find pretty much anything that you might be looking for, including old people like us. It's rife with Gen Xers. Um, so I think that uh, that's been a huge opportunity for me. And like for me, I just started as an experiment, just like anything else. Like, okay, let me start posting and see what happens. I had a friend who was doing it, and I saw what she was doing, and I was like, oh, you're not even making a fool of yourself. Like this is working for you. And she's a birth educator. It wasn't like she was somebody who was either teaching people how to make money on TikTok or just doing funny lip syncs or something like that. So I was like, okay, I can see myself doing this. So then I just tried it and I just started meeting a ton of people. I mean, I kind of think it's a better LinkedIn than LinkedIn. Um,
Mm,
so then ever since, I've just really enjoyed having that as an opportunity to meet people, meet clients, and then it's also been a really great creative outlet for me. Um, so yeah, it's one of those things like it's not perfect. Like any platform isn't perfect, but I've just the gains for me have outweighed the negatives. Which who knows what Chinese spies have access to all my data, but fine, the trade off is worth it. So I'm good.
yeah. Well, I love the comment about like being better than that LinkedIn is such a low bar at this point. So, but it's good to know that TikTok has cleared that. We've got Cato has joined us. Cato is another member of the Solopreneur Success community, and of which I am the fearless leader or the fearful leader. And Casey is a member. So great to have you here, Cato and Falake. I hope I am saying your name correctly. If you have any questions or reflections, just share them there in the chat. Um, Casey, although we are old friends and I have been following your work for some time, I do not know, and I would love to know, the origin story of your brand, which is rulerless, which I love. I had to actually look it up to see if it was an actual word. It depends on which dictionary you're looking at. But yeah, tell me a little bit about. Yeah, I know enough. Yeah, I know some of your background, and you can go into as much as that as you want to go into. But what is rulerless? Who is that for? And what are you trying to help folks accomplish through the rulerless Substack publication?
Sure. I was actually in Thailand. I do all my best thinking in Thailand, which is a bummer because it's going to be a long time before I'm going to be able to get back there with two little babies. But I was like sitting in a coffee shop trying to think about like what, just really with the purpose of like, what do I want my name to be and what do I want this to be about? And I at the time was working in education and but I was just thinking about what do I stand for? And my uncle, who's a really thoughtful person, has a saying that I have really found valuable over the years. He says, "There is no valid external measurement of a human life. There is no valid, objective, external measurement of a human life." And I just love that because it really reminds us that we can kind of turn our life into whatever we want it to be. And we can measure it by whatever way works for us. And if we are measuring it in a way that doesn't work for us, we can find a new yardstick, a new ruler that is the one that works for us. That's not necessarily somebody else's. Mine tends to be joy. Like that's how I measure things. And I know that's probably pretty close to yours as well. I think we share a lot of values in that way. And so then I was just kind of thinking, like, what do I, how do I translate that? And I just wrote down, no rules, no rulers. I kind of liked the double meaning of the of rulers. You know
Mhm.
that you have the freedom, you have sovereignty, um, and you also have yeah you have sovereignty and freedom. And so then I just kind of went rulerless, and I just like have like even like I have the original document where I wrote that down. Somebody else has trademarked it subsequently. Like I didn't trademark it at the time. I didn't even have the domain. Somebody else is using it. So who knows like whether they're going to come after me at some point. But it felt like a nice way to characterize what I was trying to do in the world of education. And now I think it's says something about the essays that I write on Substack and kind of the nature of the work that I do, trying to help people question the assumptions that they've made about how they think things have to be, and letting go of some of the rules and assumptions that we have that are when we reconsider them, we find new opportunities and new paths that we could potentially follow. So thank you for asking. That's kind of the origin story of that, I'd say.
Well, I love that because my mind went right to the ruler as sovereign, as person in charge, as authority. Um, and when I looked at your website before we jumped on, I saw that, this whole idea of choosing your metrics, which um, I think has a lot to do with personal sovereignty and personal authority. Um, and it is something, a value that I think we share and we both talk about quite a bit because in the land, even on Substack now, the digital marketers and Substack gurus are all falling all over each other, trying to come up with ways to get people to jump into some sort of notes uh, mini course, mastermind, what have you. Like you got to go viral on notes. You have to have more people writing notes. You have to write more notes. Like
Mm,
this is the latest or the current Substack growth hack, and it reminds me of one of the reasons why I wanted to get more away from social media, which is it seems to be much more about impressions than impact is kind of the way I look at it. And I will often ask clients, like, when they're coming to me with, uh, the idea that the solution to all of their problems is some sort of social media strategy, some sort of
mm,
growth. It's like, well, are you chasing impressions, or do you actually want to make an impact? Because if they're maybe not mutually exclusive, but impressions does not necessarily equal impact. But
mhm,
social media and Substack, in a way, does have this way of creating this idea that the extent of your reach, how many people are seeing you, how viral your notes are, how many likes and comments your posts are getting, is somehow a measure of your impact, maybe even whether or not um, you're worth paying attention to. So I love that
yeah.
aspect of it. And so what are when you were thinking about this, what are the metrics that you're using right now to define whether or not you're reaching the right people and having an impact on the people that you want to have an impact on or with?
Yeah, I think you make such good points about that we pay attention to the metrics that are easy to measure as a proxy for the metrics that might actually matter more to us, or as a way of hiding from even having to consider what matters to us. And so while I definitely want to pay attention in my own work to some kind of overall overarching strategy of trying to reach the right people, et cetera. I think for me right now, I'm just kind of trying to get back in the game a little bit, because some of those things have shifted during flight. That I have, as you know, I've spent like the past 18 months or so, like pregnancy and then having small children, and my babies are 13 months old now, and I'm having, a little more time, a little more space, a little more clarity to kind of rebuild my business. And I've been working with clients all the while, but the problem is uh, that the pipeline kind of has dried up a little bit. Like, okay, I had a new client here, a new client there, but overall, I was in a sort of a triage situation over the past year and a half of like, let me kind of keep things alive, keep things going. But that meant that I couldn't really focus on stuff that was outward facing as much, or I could just kind of do it in a way that was um, kind of just maintaining without actually growing. And for me, the growing part is the growing in my own sense of myself and my own clarity about what I'm doing, and who I'm doing it for, and like observing how that has changed over time. And am I thinking too small? Am I thinking too so I'm kind of in my head about some of these things. And so for me, my priority right now is really just to kind of get back into putting in some reps of like showing up, and then doing that assessment. Like you talk a lot about like looking in the rearview mirror to see what's worked in the past. And then like that's going to be your best bet probably for moving forward, what's going to continue to work. Um, and for me, I part of it is like assessing that. It's like which part worked, but like, do I have hypotheses about why this worked, and like what were the actual things I was doing? Can I retrace my steps? It all seems like a blur. And so, like for me, like okay, going live on TikTok every morning, it's for me, it's like recognizing that some of the things have shifted, like in the time that I've been away from scripted content and more like FaceTime, like I'm running around with the camera and making you dizzy by saying something unscripted and talking to you, like talking to the camera like I'm just FaceTiming a friend. Well, that wasn't really fitting the way that I was doing it. I needed to figure out how to do that. And
Mhm,
so let me show up on live and just practice just speaking on camera, which has never been a strength of mine, but let me just practice doing it. And in the meantime, maybe I can help somebody. So I can measure the impact of that based on how am I growing, and am I doing something that's intrinsically valuable to me that I would enjoy doing anyway, regardless of the results? That I don't have to go, oh, only so and so, only two people commented, or only one person showed up. It's like, whatever. But did I enjoy it? Did I have a connection with that person? And if so, then cool. Then I can do it again. And I can do it again. And then I can kind of pick a point in the future at which I'm going to step back and evaluate. But those are some of the moves that I'm making right now of like, what does it look like just for me to show up and kind of treat myself like a beginner again, treat myself like somebody with a little bit of a clean slate where um, I don't necessarily know what's going to work in 2025 to attract my ideal client, or even necessarily who that ideal client is anymore, as I've changed and grown, as the world has changed. So much happening right now in the United States that a lot of the messages uh, that I was sharing don't they aren't hit landing in the same way, they don't kind of fit the moment, understandably so. So then what does that look like? And I see that as an opportunity to get better at being able to see things through other people's eyes, and which is necessary in order to reach them. So kind of a
mhm.
long drawn out answer, but I'm curious what that looks like for you as well. How are you measuring uh, your impact and the value of your activities? It's something you talk about a little bit, a lot. So I kind of have a sense of that, but we'd love to hear um, how what I said strikes you, or kind of what how that relates to your situation.
Yeah, well, I just wanna reflect back real quickly that I love that for at least a moment, and maybe if you're still in this moment, like, just showing up is success, right? Just
Yeah.
just getting back in the game, getting back in the arena, that's success. Um, and I think that, you know, all meaningful, fulfilling, joy-filled endeavor has to begin with just taking that smallest viable step into possibility. And so I just want to reflect that because I think too often we think if we're, the whole guru speak, go big or go home thing. Like if we're not going big, we're not actually doing anything. It's like, I don't know. You know, to just reflect back on a couple of the points that you made, like when you're trying to figure out what to do next, I do find that most people would benefit from checking the rearview mirror first because rather than chase impressions, rather than chase the next shiny tool, tactic, uh, blueprint, hack, roadmap, whatever the gurus and digital marketers are peddling, rather than
Mhm.
chasing more, it would probably be in your best interest to take a look at what has worked in the past. Where have I had a little traction? And instead of adding more to your to-do list or more to your this is what I need to learn, um, just try to optimize something that you already had a little traction with. Like optimizing a system that already has some traction is the fastest way to increase velocity, right? To
Mhm.
your time to target, because optimizing an existing system by eliminating things that you don't have to do anymore, optimizing the least efficient components is that's just the scientific mathematical way
Mhm.
to increase ease and velocity. Make the thing that's already working work more effectively and efficiently.
Right.
Anytime you are chasing after the a new strategy, a new tactic, a new tool, or adding anything to your to-do list, you are by definition decreasing the effectiveness and efficiency of your system. So I think that core question that we began with is really important. Like, are you chasing impressions or are you chasing impact? Because if you want to chase impressions, if you want more people to see you, there's lots of ways you can do that. Most of them are not going to make you feel very good about yourself. And you're probably going to increasingly have difficulty looking the person in the mirror in the eye because, clickbait, hooky, catchy, trendy headlines, all those, like, is that what you want? Because if that's what you want, I'm not judging. I'm saying like that's fine. Like you do you. But one of the things that I hear in your branding, rulerless, is it's not about breaking all the rules. It's defining the rules that matter to you.
Right.
And so one of the things that I really believe in, a couple fundamental things. Number one, it's called the game of life. It's not called the grind of life. But how many people tuning in can say, I am playing my game right now? How many people feel more like they're just grinding out another day, grinding out content for social media, grinding out content for their blog or their broadcast or their YouTube channel or whatever. And how many of you are doing that because you did it yesterday, but you haven't necessarily been getting the results that you say you actually want? Like
Mm.
that's one of the fundamental things is having some clarity of who are you becoming. And if you're going to become the kind of person that can accomplish the things that you say you want to accomplish, you're probably going to have to see, be, and do things a little bit differently than you did yesterday, which means don't just get up and unconsciously, blindly repeat what you did yesterday or chase after someone else's solution, tactical solution to the adaptive problem of you being more like you and doing what makes you happy. Um, and to me, that's you referenced that we both speak quite a bit about joy. And, what is a joy-filled life is probably not going to be measured by how much money is in your bank account or how many how many followers you have or how many impressions you have um, on your content, but what difference did you make? What difference did you make in the world? What difference did you make for the people in your life that you um, are trying to make a difference with and for? Um,
Mm,
to me, it's the measure of my success is measured moment by moment. It's
mhm.
not measured by some target in the distant future that I hope to reach. So I don't even know if I answered any of your questions, but that's what kind of comes up for me is, if you're going to play your game, you have to know what game you want to play. You have to define the game that you want to play. And if you're going to play it on your terms, you're going to have to define the rules that matter to you. And you're going to have to define your non-negotiables, your boundaries, your guardrails. And the whole you, you were saying you're not even necessarily sure what success means now or who that person is that you're trying to serve or what exactly. It's like, well, the clarity will come by simply waking up every morning, entering the arena and engaging the field. Like
Yeah.
let the what's happening in the moment, let the data that you're collecting in the moment, let the impact that you're having in the moment with the person that happens to be right in front of you help you define with increasing clarity where you're actually heading and what you're actually trying to accomplish.
I think that leads nicely into a great question from Cato, who says, "How do you coax meaningful connection and interaction within your community?" And I love that question. I think that like that Cato just kind of teed it up for us, and also where you were going with that, Scott, because I think that that uh, I wouldn't necessarily frame it as coaxing meaningful connection and interaction within the community. I would frame it as like who's showing up. In other words, going back to that idea of who's right in front of you, and serving that person as opposed to trying to get more eyeballs and more, widen the people who have seen you before, to focusing on the ones who are showing up in a more meaningful way already, and having that deeper interaction with them. That can get lost because we have been trained by these platforms to seek more and more, and by our culture and society going millennia before we even had um, social media, just like the nature of empires rising and falling and things like that, seeking more. Uh, so it's kind of baked in, and so that to reverse that and to just focus on like, okay, who's showing up and how do I build relationships with those people directly, individually or eventually as a group. Um, but how do I reward that? And I think um, that one thing that's kind of fun about Substack is that it increases the tactics that we have available for doing that, but it doesn't require fancy fancy tactics. It's really just being being awake and aware to the potential of those connections, of like that your community is the ones who are showing up, as opposed to like, oh, I need more people in this community. It's like, no, you start with who's there. um, that's kind of how I see it. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah. Well, I just want to quickly, before I answer, give a shout out to Brandon Straza, who is the publisher of the Success Finder publication on Substack and also the platform, the Success Finder, which I am one of the leaders on. And we have Jennifer, also a member of the Solopreneur Success Circle community. She was a partner in Seth Godin's goodbids.org project with me. And Juan just joined in. So great to have you all here. Um, One of the things that you're pointing to, or at least that comes up for me, Casey, is thinking about and around this idea of meaning. Like oftentimes if I put out a ask me anything kind of post, inevitably someone will say, well, what's the meaning of life? And I've actually thought about that quite a bit. And I think it depends, right? Like you get to decide what makes for a meaningful life for you. If you are pursuing if you've bought into the pursuit of happiness, which the founding fathers definitely intended to be the pursuit of property, the pursuit of status and things, right? Land in particular, but um, that's cool. Play your game. Like if you find meaning in chasing after money and reputation, you do you. Um, I have found that, and the meaning of life is to live a life of meaning, and that means you have to define what that means to 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 you as an individual. I remember you and I share a background as musicians and as music teachers. Um, and I've shared this in our community calls before, but it's something, even though I really don't perform publicly anymore, and really my music career is has distilled down to playing ukulele songs for my grandson every morning while he dances with his grandma. Um, Early in my career, as many of us have experienced, I would be performing to the beautiful sound of one fan clapping. And like most ego driven people, young people, I thought, oh, I'm a failure. There's only one person in the audience. But at a certain point, it occurred to me that yes, there's only one person in the audience, but they actually are clapping. And I just, maybe even just as an experiment, decided, I'm going to put on the best show possible for this one person. I'm going to treat this like he is one of 1,000 people, or she is one of 10,000 people. And I'm going to lean into what I believe music really is for. And music is a language, and languages are used to communicate, collaborate, connect. And I'm just gonna do my very best. And the more I leaned into that edge, the more quickly I found that the sound of one fan clapping became the sound of two fans clapping. Like it's the whole third dancer idea um, from the TED Talk, and our mutual friend Seth Godin has referenced it in the marketing seminar and other thing. Like everything begins with like if you get to the point where you have the sound of one fan clapping, you have the possibility of adding the second and then the third dancer, and then pretty soon that thing that you are doing is not just you're no longer some idiot on stage banging away uh, on their instrument, but now you've created a community, and you're an instigator or leader of some sort of movement.
Mm.
And so, and just to wrap up a thought around meaning, I think a big part of defining what meaningful means to you is defining what enough is to you. And when
Mhm.
I defined one fan clapping as enough, that changed everything.
Yeah.
That was sufficient. And I didn't have to, I no longer operated from a feeling of less than, or scarcity, or fear of scarcity, or lack of abundance, or any of that sort of thing. And everything else became a naturally occurring side effect. My reputation as a musician increased as a naturally occurring side effect of treating one fan clapping with the same importance and value as the sound of 1,000 fans clapping. Uh, Remuneration as a musician increased as a side effect of doing meaningful work with and for the people that I decided were um, worth paying attention to and putting on a show for. So that's kind of the way that I think about that. I'm curious if you have any reflections from your musical past that weave into that whole idea, or what right now defines what meaningful work is, and what joy in that work is for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that answer to that latter part is pretty simple. I mean, it really is am I growing from this? Like, am I finding intrinsic value in this? And then trusting that if I do some of the things that have worked in the past to lead to paid work, then that will work again. And I can't necessarily track the exact path that that will take, but in general, that's what I've seen work. And so I'm just gonna keep digging away in that mine. And then I think that the reason that works too, this idea of leaning into the one fan clapping and embracing, perhaps literally that one person, I think it ties back to confidence. And when I think about my current career and then also my former career as a musician, um, that like when you're in this phase where you're not satisfied and you're looking for more, and you see who showed up and you look at that gift and go, oh, that's it. um I think that like people can smell the flop sweat. That as you're trying harder to try to like, well, maybe this will work and maybe this will work, and like, whereas like kind of slowing down and being present and kind of saying, okay, this is what I have to offer. This is enough for this one person, so maybe this will be enough for the next person, the next person. Um, a few things happen as a result of that. First, it builds your confidence instead of taking away from your confidence, and it makes the whole thing more sustainable. And then it also means that because it's more sustainable, you can keep showing up and you're not constantly second guessing yourself and reevaluating and changing tactics, changing horses mid race. And then also you're then um so you're not overwhelmed, and you're building on what's working fundamentally. And when you're building on what's working, you can never there is no regress, there is no egress, like you're only making progress. Because sure, that one person might leave, but it's like, okay, well, now we're just like at equilibrium again. Like there is no, oh, now it's worse. Like you met that person, you connected with that person. There'll be another, and now you're going to meet this person, connect with this person in the most authentic way that you know how, being yourself as opposed to trying to do a dance, especially for them. um you know bringing them the work that you've already honed and you're doing your best with, and like as opposed to continually trying to like um find some other wind. Of course there's going to be a sailing metaphor in here, but that, yeah, so then you're just happy with what you have, content with what you have. I think that there's content doesn't mean complacent, because you're still doing the work. Right? So it's like being satisfied with that one person doesn't mean, oh, I'm complacent, stagnating, whatever. It's like, no, you're still out there doing the work. That's the part that matters. That's the part that's your responsibility. You can't control who else shows up. But then you're sort of grounded in that, and other people can feel that energy. And so many people are looking for that energy for themselves, that they know that they found something that's real and true. And I try to spend as much of my time there as possible. I will acknowledge that's been harder recently, as I've struggled with discouragement and like a little bit of the crisis of confidence that just has inevitably come from complete transformational new identity as a mother, and with a lot of things that go along with that. Um, and I think that I've just tried to take that in stride and kind of recognize that as just part of showing up as a person. Um, and that's part of the realness that I hopefully bring, is as I kind of work through that semi in public. But it's just encouraged me to kind of double down on, okay, then I can only be who I can be. um, and I can present that in different facets. I can try different tactics, I can play in different spaces for my own creative enjoyment, but ultimately it comes down to, um, who's going to resonate with who I already am, as opposed to who I'm trying to present myself to be. And
Mm.
then that's gonna be those are gonna be the people who are gonna be willing to hang out for the long haul. Like, the last thing you'd want is to, like, present yourself as some other person, and now you've accidentally, you know, married this person that you went on a date with, and now you have to keep up the act for the rest of your life. No, thanks.
Oh, that is such a great point. I'm curious about your experience with this, but one of the things that I frequently find myself addressing very early on in my client work is what I call the identity trap, right? It's
Mhm.
and so there's the identity around I'm a creator, I'm a freelancer, I'm a solopreneur, I'm a small business, but then there's the other identities. I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, I'm a mother, what have you. And it gets even more maybe insidious when people start clinging to identities like, oh, I'm an introvert or
Mm,
what have you, right? Because, that they are traps because they impose limits on our potential and possibility because we're often using them as an excuse. Oh, I'm an introvert. I can't possibly do a Substack live. Oh, um, I'm uh, I'm a coach. I don't I don't coach for free type of like all these
mm,
things, all these things that become real impediments and they become like these dogmatic statements that actually prevent us from getting the things that we profess that we really want. And
yeah.
the thing about whenever anybody speaks in absolutes, you know, uses that kind of dogmatic language, I'm always like, the problem with dogmatic thinking is it requires that you behave like a well-behaved dog, and that's not really my jam. Um, so I love that edge that you kind of wove in, but the other piece that I have, and I've seen you talk about this a little bit, um, maybe in a note or something like that. This whole idea of being a creator, uh, and like another identity, right? Um, and that's an identity I often find myself having to navigate with clients is, oh, I don't have a creative bone in my body.
Mhm.
I'm not a creative person. Like, really? Like how by what definition of creative, are we making this arriving at this value judgment about yourself? Because for me, creativity is simply the act of bringing something into the world that didn't exist until you brought it into the world. So a Substack Live broadcast is an act of creation, which brings in this other idea that creativity is by definition collaborative. Because even if I was doing Substack Live by myself, I'm doing it on Substack. I'm collaborating with Substack, with the app, with the interface, with the idea of going live. I didn't invent any of these things. It's this idea that we're always like life is an art project. It's called the art of living. And for me, the distinction between being like merely creative, which I don't mean as to disrespect or diminish the importance of creativity, but every time you send an email, do a broadcast, what have you, you're engaged in an act of creation. The question becomes, where are you going to level up to artistry? Like, where are the art acts of creation that you care enough to develop a practice around, to hone your craft, to um, try to make a meaningful change for the better happen for yourself, for other people, and so forth. And so I'm aware that we're coming up on. I have to go pick up my grandson from the bus
Sure.
stop here in just a second, but I'd love for you to take us home with just your thoughts around creative endeavor, the distinction between creativity and artistry, and how people can lead a more meaningful life, thinking about it as an art project as opposed to just doing stuff.
Yeah. Oh, and we've got a great question from Kata that doesn't look like we're going to be able to get to, but it's so juicy. But yeah, I mean, I think that the first thing that I think of is like, let's not gatekeep ourselves. Like these aren't necessarily, we can define some of these identities any way we want to. Like, sure, you can't just be like, I'm a surgeon because I want to see myself. I see myself as a surgeon. It's like, here, that one requires some credentials and training, but so much other stuff we don't there are no gatekeepers to like say whether we're creative, and we can also use that to our detriment to say like, oh, I'm a procrastinator, I'm a perfectionist. It's like, well, is that helping you to define yourself that way? Is there another definition that you can use that's more helpful? Is there another way of seeing yourself, describing yourself, that is taking you in the direction you want to go? And so seeing ourselves as creative people is something, like you said, it only requires actually creating something, and then like there you're a creator. You played a few notes on a musical instrument. Congratulations, you're a musician. You wrote something, congratulations, you're a writer. So these identities are ones that we can adopt for ourselves. And I see a lot of people causing themselves a lot of pain, not allowing themselves to step into that. And we live in a world where there's a lot of these identities that are more accessible than they've ever been, and the gatekeepers are silent or non-existent. So I think that that opens up a lot of possibilities for all of us.
Well, I love that. I think that's a great place to stick the landing, just placing authority and responsibility in the hands of anybody that's tuning in. Like you get to decide all these things. You get to decide which identities you're clinging to and which ones you're stepping into. You get to decide where you're what creative endeavor and artistic endeavors you're investing invaluable time, energy, and effort into. You get the game of life is something you get to define. The terms of engagement and so forth. So just would encourage everybody that's tuned in. Number one, thank you so much, but also just encouraging you all to you know take that step into possibility. Maybe let loosen the grip on your assumptions about yourself and about your situation, about other people, and challenge those assertions in pursuit of becoming a slightly better version of yourself in the next moment. Casey, this has been wonderful. It looks like you've got some new fans, so I appreciate that. And it's
Thanks.
always great to spend time with you. So thanks for taking the time
Yeah,
today.
let's do this again sometime. A lot of fun. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Yeah, anytime. All right. Thanks, everyone.